Know the truth about Chrissy Jones and Jim Jones' reconsideration. If I told you about the greatest treachery, no, it wasn't from Jim's enemies, from the woman he most trusted. Chrissy, it's not just a small secret. Everything in their universe could be destroyed by a bombshell of this kind. After a startling revelation of a perverted truth, Cameron's family member recently dropped a bombshell. Chrissy's incredible life story is about to be presented in a way that no one else can. When Jim realized what was about to happen, he was left standing. When you are taken by surprise and deceived, what do you do? When the individual you loved is you could never imagine that this is more than rumors, hiding the darkest secrets. This will be a comprehensive disclosure of everything you were not aware of or could not have imagined. If you believe, trust me, you've heard the worst. Not even. You are not as bad as it is. Thus, stay close to the truth. What if I told you that you were aware of Chrissy Lehman's beliefs? What if the perfect alliance wasn't real? It was nothing more than a web of lies that was broadcast on television for over 10 years. What if Jim Jones, the guy who trusted him, is now the victim of a betrayal so severe that it could fall apart? His works are all still in use today. Because there is more to this than just gossip. It's a truth bomb ready to explode on the streets of Harlem and beyond. And it will make you look at Jim Jones and Chrissy Lewin quite differently. Let's examine Cameron. The person who helped Jim advance his career and has been there for him throughout the highs and lows, had just disclosed something startling that no one had expected. Jim is not alone in this. Chrissy Lehman is at the center of a scandal that has the potential to completely destroy Jim's career and expose the terrible truth that no one knew existed. The core scored a few goals, but he was behind, as you have seen in the glamorous photos of the public events. The scenes tell a unique story. Of course, recently, Cameron's family disclosed the shocking truth that Jim didn't realize we were talking about riddles so deep and dark. They could bring the entire deck of cards collapsing. Think about it. The woman who has dated Jim for years, Chrissy, has been living two different lives. Now that the truth is out, Jim needs to pick up the pieces. It's like a cold slap. This isn't straightforward in Jim's eyes, and for everyone else who heard their story. This isn't a reality TV drama. It's real, the ultimate treachery in life. And how did we get to Cameron? A man who has never been willing to voice his thoughts has just pulled back the curtain to show that Chrissy's secret life in its entirety, because Chrissy has been wearing Jim's rock as a disguise for years. However, the reality is somewhat different. Since Cameron's family has revealed that Chrissy has participated in questionable private dealings, issues, including business choices that undermine Jim's beliefs. You can only hide long-held truth, as they say, and suddenly it's showing up in the most startling way. It's possible that Chrissy's presence indicates the existence of a network of lies. Jim is the last man standing as a result of getting so enmeshed that it is impossible to avoid. Deborah, the betrayal of someone he thought he could trust, has taken him by surprise. Above all, trust. But let's talk about how deep the secrets are. Engaged? No, we're not talking about infidelity or cheating. But Chrissy's concealment goes beyond that. Cameron was the one responsible for much more business wrongdoing, questionable deals, and behind-the-scenes changes that were carefully hidden from Jim. For many years, he had just told everyone the truth, and now everyone is watching as Jim's life is collapsing. Let's talk about the first of many. For years, Jim's use of money and power has been a secret and a betrayal. Trusted, they have collaborated on projects with his company in addition to this heartfelt endeavor. Ventures worked together on a number of projects and even built an empire. However, Chrissy has been working in the background, her own covert enterprise, using her power to manipulate the situation to her advantage based on personal information about Chrissy's involvement in a number of questionable financial transactions. Jim was not aware of these implicit transactions, which we cannot ignore. Chrissy's perspective on this mess. For years, she had affairs in her private life that no one knew about. They talked about covert connections, travel, and romances. Jim was unable to imagine those who may, if they ever got the chance, they would destroy him. The crazy part, Cameron knew. For a while, everyone in Cameron's family was aware of the situation, but they remained silent out of loyalty to Jim. However, they won't be staying longer now that the facts are revealed. Jim's career was paved by a man named Silence, has reached a breaking point, and now everyone knows it. The truth about Chrissy's questionable actions and betrayal, but it goes beyond money and fidelity, not extramarital affairs, is at issue here. Have faith in the two things Jim thought he had with Chrissy. However, he has recently been deserted. Must pick up the pieces of a career that is on the verge of collapsing on its own, and admit that all he thought he knew about Chrissy was based on lies. So why is Cameron behaving this way? Is he revealing Chrissy at last? Are these years a result of his and Jim's personal history? Or taking into account that Cameron has at last seen, having had enough of Chrissy's success, participating in actions that have hurt Jim more than anyone could have imagined? Cameron is like this. He won't because he's sick of the lies. Don't let Chrissy get away with it any longer. Due to his forced socialization with the media on the streets, Jim is now revealing all of Chrissy's secrets to the public, and there is no turning back. But while Chrissy has been acting dangerously, he is kept in the dark. But how serious was this betrayal? Is it only work-related, or is Chrissy hiding more in this tale? Sticky secrets that Jim didn't know about because we're just getting started. The reality is, on the point of destruction, the truth is painful in every manner, isn't it? When you take everything into account, it always does. You know that everything you think is safe is falling apart right in front of your eyes. And that's exactly what's requiring location. Jim now has to deal with Chrissy's severe betrayal of Jones Lampin, whom he trusted and believed in. The most public humiliating tactic was being used to uncover his rock. But that's just the beginning of the real mess, that there are more repercussions from these revelations than anyone could have imagined. Hip-hop mogul Jim Jones is in danger of losing everything in his line of work. Reputation, the same empire he has spent years building. Moreover, one individual, Chrissy, is to blame for everything. This is the catch, though. Chrissy is not just self-centered. The gravity of this treachery has been subtly displayed by Cameron's family. Beyond financial losses and hidden affairs, Chrissy was involved in a whole network covert scheme that the world is just now starting to connect. Let's analyze it. Not only was Chrissy using cords to drag Jim's back, she was depicting Cameron, who has never really been Jim's closest ally. On both sides, for years, Cameron has trusted Chrissy. There were still suspicions, even though, let's face it, Jim was completely absorbed in the fantasy on the idea that he and Chrissy were the ultimate power couple. However, everything is currently falling apart, piece by piece. This is when it gets complicated. Messy Christie's falsehoods were not merely intimate. The scale of the financial scams she was involved in is greater than anyone's. According to reports, Cameron's family has provided startling details about a questionable business, transactions that hurt Jim and betrayed his trust to the point where it's nearly impossible to comprehend. As the guardian, Chrissy kept Jim in the dark about financial decisions that should have been discussed, and Jim is currently coping with the fallout from her deceptive tactics. For others who don't know, Chrissy was the driving force behind a number of questionable investments. Concepts were not being created under Jim's name. Jim was the one who stole money, whether from companies or questionable real estate deals. When the eye was left with the bag, when the bills arrived, reliable sources close to the situation claimed that Chrissy took advantage of Jim's whole faith in her. However, Chrissy's situation is said to be far worse. This loyal friend of Jim's, yes, she has been picking sides and doing some of Jim's business in secret. The most fierce opponents believe that the response is only beginning. Goes viral among fans. More celebrities are being monitored, and calls are flowing in from everywhere. While some characterize Chrissy as a villain, she is actually a genius. Despite the fact that most of the striking aspects of Jim's own group are starting to turn against him, he is unsure of his allegiances following this shocking revelation. It all starts here. Jim has experienced more than just a personal betrayal. However, he is currently dealing with the fallout from the public. As everyone started talking about the leak as the story started, and once the truth is out, you can see how this works. There's no turning back now. While trying to figure out whether Chrissy was yanking every thread in the background, Jim has to face his own public fall. Cameron, one of Jim's greatest friends, says he finds himself completely responsible for not seeing this coming sooner. According to Cameron, an insider has been warning Jim for years that there was an issue since he was too unaware of Chrissy's feelings, which he never anticipated the woman would have. He has been involved in this kind of business for a long time. However, Cameron is now unable to control himself. In a bad situation, having a friend is one thing. However, you must now speak up when that situation jeopardizes everything you've worked for, because there's nothing else you can do. Jim is facing the very serious possibility of facing legal action, or possibly the government, due to impending legal difficulties. Investigations of the questionable transactions, if demonstrated, Chrissy was complicit in the use of his name to take advantage of him and his resources to perpetrate fraud. A portion of the obligations might be covered by Jim's assets. Jim is also facing the very real possibility of a financial disaster given the current situation. However, the overall fallout is just as cruel as the supporters who once looked up to Jim and Chrissy. How could they question their loyalty? How could they have been so duped into believing that this was a real affair when, in reality, Chrissy was just playing a game? The criticism has arrived rapidly, and Jim's fan base is starting to expand. After all these years, Jim's reputation has been tarnished, and the public is now posing challenging questions regarding his actual employment. Cameron's family has even gone so far as to make tapes available that demonstrate some of the most stunning discoveries surrounding. These tapes that were leaked show how much better Chrissy's double life is than anyone could have imagined. Chrissy talks on tape about trying to damage Jim's reputation by associating him with questionable, but people who used these records to try to kill him in the first place are highly volatile, and their actions have only heightened public indignation. Right now, let's avoid talking about the raging social media firestorm. Everyone, including social media influencers and hip-hop artists, The media is participating and sharing their opinions about Christy and Jim Jones's timidity. Lampkin is heading in the incorrect direction. Reasons for the frenzy among supporters. "You've been played, Jim, and we all anticipated," reads one tweet. Another remarks, "Chrissy has been totally Jim, who is dishonest, deserves better." But every one of these people has a darker side. Are now questioning how much of the foundation of Jim's career was it just Chrissy's lies? Did she influence the course of events? Did she hinder Jim's progress, or did he succeed? The speculation is endless, and the truth is exposed with each new revelation, causing more financial turmoil, a complex legal battle. In public, there is no doubt that Jim Jones is currently at a crossroads. Not only a betrayal of his emotions, but also the complete demise of his empire. Now that the full extent of Chrissy Lynn's treachery has been revealed, the question still remains. The outrage stems from the fact that at the beginning of this debacle, it is impossible to estimate the potential reach of this. The full extent of Chrissy's distortions is beginning to become clear as the story moves forward, and Jim Jones must deal with the terrible reality of losing not only his own relationship but also his empire, his freedom, and possibly even his freedom. What once seemed to be a fairy tale romance has now turned into a nightmare in which, the circus that Jim and Chrissy are in is getting more intense every day. There are some amazing documentaries that have been produced, and private recordings have surfaced. It was expected that the public response would be spreading through the media like wildfire, proving that Chrissy's involvement in Jim's financial predicament was deliberate and part of a well-thought-out scheme to ruin Jim's job and take his money. But what did Chrissy do? Let's break it, since we have to gain down. According to people who were close to the situation, Chrissy wasn't only there because she was manipulating the money for a long time. She knew that Jim's standing was getting better, and she wanted to make sure she had a tight grip on his in the future. She planned a number of investments and business ventures, all of which were meant to drain some of Jim's wealth while keeping him, with the ultimate gain being in the dark. Jim isn't in charge, but this is a pivotal moment as Chrissy's suspicions grow. When transactions are exposed, it seems that she wasn't just plotting to hurt Jim. Rather, she was secretly collaborating with others. Jim had trusted those who were exploiting him. One of the most shocking revelations made to the public was that, according to an anonymous source, Chrissy had been in constant contact with Jim. Jim's name is being used by competitors to conduct backroom deals that ultimately hurt him. It's far more than just a betrayal of personal trust. As the legal pressure mounts, the public is waiting for the consequences. Both sides' legal teams are preparing for an inevitable court battle, and it looks like this might be the battle of the evidence against Jim's life is incriminating, and the charges will only get worse if Chrissy is found guilty of financial crimes. In addition to ruining a career, Jim might face harsh manipulation, penalties, and even criminal charges. This controversy has the capacity to harm lives, and the media storm the news reports are everywhere should not be disregarded. Location, and everyone is keeping an eye on Sir Chrissy Lumpkin, Jim Jones, and Chrissy's exposure by Cameron. Both supporters and critics are taking sides, with some expressing sympathy for Jim's demand for justice and others wondering how they might pull him down. The next phase is the comprehension key. However, the questions are not only about Jim, they are also about Chrissy. What is she? Someone with Jim's power and influence was so vulnerable to deceit. The details of Chrissy's actions, and it's becoming clearer than ever that her motivations were far more complex than anyone's. It was found that multiple sources had come forward, demonstrating that Chrissy wasn't just involved in financial schemes, but was also linked to a number of questionable people from the shadows. And here's the worst part. Jim had no idea who he was. He was honestly in agreement with Chrissy that he was carefully upholding his reputation while surreptitiously addressing those who were mistreating him as a piece of a much larger game. Industry insiders claim that Jim's once secure empire is on the brink of disaster and that the damage could be irreversible due to poor financial management and possible litigation. Consequently, Jim's future path is uncertain, but the biggest disaster of all is that Chrissy was the worst at betraying Jim Jones, who trusted her with his future, his company, and his emotions. No matter how hard he tries to recover, the damage is too enormous and the cracks are too deep. Jim's mental health has deteriorated, and he has spent days in hiding, meeting with his legal team and trying to figure out what remains of his career. Is Jim Jones, as we know him, coming to an end? Chrissy hasn't said anything. Jim is a fighter at heart, but even the strongest fighters have moments when they doubt their ability to win the battle. Sources claim that she is making an effort to keep her at a distance, but it won't be long until the truth about what she did is exposed. As a result, her reputation is in ruins, and the public is aware of the finished story. The walls are closing in on her, and it is becoming impossible to hide the truth. But is she worried or does she care? Only time will tell. Cameron's family, who have played a vital role in the narrative, isn't over. But one thing is certain, the saga is one for the history books. Chrissy's sins are now requiring a full test disclosures to come to light. And who knows what Jim Jones's future contains in Chrissy. Wow, this has been a roller coaster with twists. Will Jim be able to emerge from the ashes? Chrissy's cunning and manipulative network. get rid of him forever. Storyline are undoubtedly bizarre, but this is the real question. What will happen to Jim next? Will Chrissy Lannon's network of contacts be able to pick up the pieces of his career? What lies ahead is anything but certain. But we'd like to hear if you think Jim has what it takes to overcome the upheaval. The truth has come out and he is permanently down. Let's start the conversation by leaving a comment below. Whose opinions are you on Chrissy's or Jim's ass? You read this article. Is Chrissy's reign coming to an end? Is she being set up in a bigger plot? We're going to uncover that comment section and give us your handle for the whole thing. So don't just sit there and hit, if you've already done so, click subscribe and push the bell to ensure you don't miss the latest updates. We've gotten even more startling revelations about you. And I can assure you that you'll want to see this video and be the first to know. If you want to see more behind-the-scenes drama, and share it with your friends so that everyone can join the conversation. We've just skimmed the surface of this incredible story, and you don't want to waste any time. We'll be keeping an eye on Jim, Chrissy, and the entire family at every turn. And we'll be telling you the truth, no matter how shocking it may be. Sign up and keep an eye out and make sure you take part in this exciting journey. Things you won't regret. This is merely the begin. Let's go with the approaching veracity. Because you think you knew everything would be fully added. You think you know the truth about Chrissy Jones and Jim Jones' reconsideration. If I told you about the greatest treachery, no, it wasn't from Jim's enemies, from the woman he most trusted. Chrissy, it's not just a small secret. Everything in their universe could be destroyed by a bombshell of this kind. After a startling revelation of a perverted truth, Cameron's family member recently dropped a bombshell. Chrissy's incredible life story is about to be presented in a way that no one else can. When Jim realized what was about to happen, he was left standing. When you are taken by surprise and deceived, what do? When the individual you loved is you could never imagine that this is more than rumors, hiding the darkest secrets. This will be a comprehensive disclosure of everything you were not aware of or could not have imagined. If you believe, trust me, you've heard the worst. Not even. You are not as bad as it is. Thus, stay close to the truth. What if I told you that you were aware of Chrissy Lehman's beliefs? What if the perfect alliance wasn't real? It was nothing more than a web of lies that was broadcast on television for over 10 years. What if Jim Jones, the guy who trusted him, is now the victim of a betrayal so severe that it could fall apart? His works are all still in use today. Because there is more to this than just gossip. It's a truth bomb ready to explode on the streets of Harlem and beyond. And it will make you look at Jim Jones and Chrissy Lewin quite differently. Let's examine Cameron. The person who helped Jim advance his career and has been there for him throughout the highs and lows, had just disclosed something startling that no one had expected. Jim is not alone in this. Chrissy Lehman is at the center of a scandal that has the potential to completely destroy Jim's career and expose the terrible truth that no one knew existed. The core scored a few goals, but he was behind, as you have seen in the glamorous photos of the public events. The scenes tell a unique story. Of course, recently, Cameron's family disclosed a shocking truth that Jim didn't. Startling way. It's possible that Chrissy's presence indicates the existence of a network of lies. Jim is the last man standing as a result of getting so enmeshed that it is impossible to avoid. Deborah, the betrayal of trusted. They have collaborated on projects with his company in addition to this heartfelt endeavor. Ventures worked together on a number of projects and even built an empire. However,